Color blocking is where you're going to establish the base color palette of your design. Before we start blocking though, let's talk about using the color wheel. After deciding who my character is, the color wheel becomes my next stage of creative development. At color.adobe.com, you can find this handy dandy tool for designing color harmonies. You can use this drop-down menu here to select a style of harmony. Analogous colors are those found in a narrow wedge of the color wheel. A monochromatic color harmony uses a single hue through a range of values of light and dark. Complementary colors are polar opposites that create an appealing contrast. And you've got a few other options as well. I'm a big fan of color triads. Why? Well, let me show you. Here's a quick little drawing of an elven explorer. Now let's bring up the color wheel. A triadic color scheme is made up of 3 evenly spaced points on a color wheel. This formula is a great shortcut to creating vibrant and harmonious color schemes, which is perfect for my cartoonish style. You can see my color selections bend the rules of an evenly balanced triangle, but I still try to stay true to the color hues once I start to paint. I'm only using variations of light and dark values to break up the high contrast areas. Now, the general rule with cartoon color is that a restricted color palette has more potential for narrative clarity and emotional connection. Now that you know where I'm going with my color theory, let's jump back over to our Elemental Guardian character and build a color palette using the triad and O'Keeffe's painting. Well, look at this. Is it just a coincidence that her main color harmonies are kind of triadic? I don't think so. But let's set these color options aside for a moment and set up our workspace for quick and efficient color blocking. First, I set a folder with my ink layer and sketch layers. It's very smart to get organized at this point. Our layering system is about to get much more complicated with the addition of color. Now that I'm organized, I select my ink layer and I grab the Magic Wand tool, which is also the shortcut W on the keyboard. I click in the white background of my page. Next, I go to the selection menu and select Inverse, or use the shortcut Control-Shift-I. Now I've got my character caught in a big lasso. But I've got a little problem. If I zoom in on the line art, you can see my selection includes some gray pixels around the edges. I don't want my color blocking to bleed outside of my character design, so I need to modify this selection. I go back to the Select menu at the top and scroll halfway down to Modify. I select Contract, and I get a new pop-up. In this menu, I can reduce my current selection by a range of pixels. For the thickness of my line art, I'm going to try contracting by 3 pixels. This puts my selection right in the middle of the line art. Well, for the most part. But it looks like here in the narrow line of the character's pinky finger, my selection falls inside the line art. If a selection isn't working for you, you can also go back into Selection and Modify and choose Expand. I'll expand by 1 pixel. And I think that's as close to perfect of a selection as I'm going to get. Now that I've got my selection, I make a new folder for my color layers. On this new layer, I'm going to create a white silhouette behind my character. That way later, when I'm blending layers together, I never have to worry about my colors interacting with background elements. There's always going to be a white buffer between the character and the background. I'll select white from my color wheel and tap the G key on the keyboard to select the Paint Bucket tool. I also want to look up in my Options menu here and make sure all layers is turned off so my line art doesn't affect my fill. Next, I fill my selection. I'm going to turn off the paper so you can see what I've done. Now I'm going to release my selection by going to Select, Deselect, or holding Command D on the keyboard. I'll be using Expand and Contract pretty frequently as I move through my color blocking stage, so I'm going to assign both functions some keyboard shortcuts. All the way down at the bottom of the Edit menu, you'll find the Shortcut menu. Command L is going to be my Expand shortcut, It seems to override a levels menu shortcut, but that's not something I need on hand, so I don't mind. And I'm setting selection contract to Command key on the keyboard. Now I'm going to bring back up my color triad and start blocking. I create a new layer on top of the white silhouette layer. I tap W on the keyboard to select the magic wand tool, and I click inside the gown. Now I hold Command K to bring up my expand selection menu and expand my selection by 1 pixel. Then I tap G for my paint tool and fill the selection. As I talked about in an earlier chapter on cartoon coloring, color should tell the story of a character. So with my range of options here, I'm going to use the blue in my triad as the gown color. The blue has a regal dignity to it. I use Command D to deselect my selection. Now I move on to the skin. I tap W on the keyboard to select the magic wand tool, and I click inside a region of the skin. Then I hold Shift to add to this selection and click inside the other regions of skin. Once I've selected all the skin areas, I hold Command K to bring up my expand selection menu and expand my selection by 1 pixel. Then I tap G for my paint bucket tool and fill the selection. Now the photo of the painting I have isn't as vibrant as I want for my cartoonish design. So you'll notice I'm not using the dullish tones of the sample triad, but I'm staying true to the form of the triad. I'll fill the remainder of the costume with the green, and I'll make her elemental stone match her skin. I'm also going to fill the hair in white for now, which you can't really see, but just believe me, it's there. And now I've completed my basic color blocking. You can see how following the basic guidelines of the color triad can really get you to a decent color scheme with lots of vibrancy and contrast without a whole lot of effort. You'll also notice that I did all my color blocking on a single layer. This makes it so much easier to make adjustments, which is exactly what we're going to talk about in the next chapter.